everybody's too young to be married to somebody who's been practicing for 50 years. So I'll start with that and introduce Ann Adams and ask Miss Adams if she would please stand. She is the husband of Thomas Adams. I'd ask Marge Casey to stand. Miss Casey is the wife of Warren C. Casey. I'd ask Maxine Dew to stand. She is the wife of Judge Raymond Dew. And Florence Harstfield. I'd ask Miss Harstfield to stand. She is the wife of Marshall Hartsfield. And Virginia McMillan. Virginia is the wife of Robert McMillan. At this point, I'll call on Robert McMillan to introduce our honorees today, as well as Tom Adams will come next. We're going to have two presenters today. Robert will handle some, and then Mr. Adams will handle some.
Thank you very much, William. Alice Roman asked me to make a few introductory remarks. They will be few and they'll be brief because we've got about 10 biographical sketches that we want to cover. But she said it'd be interesting, she thought, to tell something about how the law practice was in August of 1949 when I started and when these others started. I actually felt like I started before that because I was running errands in the summer of 47 and the summer of 48 and then licensed in August of 49. But I checked with Tom Lunsford this morning at the State Bar Office. He said today in Wake County there are 3,025 lawyers. I think undoubtedly we need a few more, but in any event, that's the number we have today. In August of 1949, it was Tom's estimate that we had about 190 lawyers in Wake County. I have a picture on my wall of the Wake County Bar taken just before World War II. There are 109 lawyers in that picture. That included Governor Huey, it included the Supreme Court, it included the Attorney General staff, it included the Council of State, it included every lawyer in Wake County, and the total was 109. So the bar has grown. The largest firm in Raleigh at the time I started, and William Johnson is here, he started before I did. He doesn't look that old, but he did. When William started, and when I started, the largest firm in Raleigh had 5 people. The name of the firm was Smith, Leach, and Anderson. Willie Smith, Oscar Leach, and John Anderson, and 2 young whippersnappers, Jim Dorsett and Willie Smith Jr., who were associates. The longest name was Bailey, Holding, Lassiter, and Langston. The Willie Smith firm did a lot of corporate work, insurance defense work. Bailey, Holding, Lassiter, and Langston did a lot of utility practice and general law practice. Duncan and Duncan were a law firm here. John Duncan and Dick Duncan, they did real estate work. George Balkin did real estate work, and we'll hear more about that in a few minutes when we talk about Tom Adams. Joyner and Harrison were a well-established firm representing railroads and corporations, and we'll hear about Billy Joyner Jr. Murray Allen was a lawyer who did nothing but railroad work. Weathers and Young, Carol Weathers and Charles Young did real estate and corporate practice. And there were several law firms, and this was true of most law firms at that time and most individual lawyers. They did general law. And by general law, I mean criminal law, civil law, title law, domestic law, anything that walked in the office. And most of them did a very good job. And some of the firm names were Bunn and Hatch, Sims and Sim, Douglas and McMillan, which I joined. I was not the McMillan, but I was of that McMillan, Brassfield and Malton, Bickett and Banks. The law offices were in the insurance building, which is now called the Aikens County Office Building, the First Citizens Bank Building, which is now a parking lot, the Security National Bank Building, which is where the First Citizens downtown office is located, and the Lawyers Building. The first lawyers that I know of who left the downtown area were Marshall Harstfield and Jimmy Pointer, and we'll hear more about that later. But every lawyer that I knew of in Raleigh was in the downtown area, within a 2-block area of the Wake County Courthouse. Of course, there were lawyers in Wendell and some of the outlying towns who had offices in those towns. Now, we had the Superior Court, the Civil Court, and we had recorders courts in Fuquay, Wake Forest, Wendell, Zebulon, Garner, Apex, and Cary, and in one of the recorders courts, I won't name which, the judge was not paid and the district attorney was not paid unless there was a conviction. that court was very popular among criminal defense lawyers. The judge wasn't paid unless he convicted somebody, and the DA wasn't paid unless somebody was convicted. And that probably was where that term, the costers have got to come, originally. Now, I read in the paper last week that young lawyers out of law school are getting $100,000 a year plus Mercedes cars. Well, I almost did that well because I had a job. A lot of my friends did not have a job. I'll talk about some of that in a minute. But my job paid $225 a month, which was about the going rate for beginning lawyers, those who were lucky enough to get a job. As all of you know, a lot of young lawyers now get started with a boost up by getting on the court-appointed list. There was no such creature as the court-appointed list in those days. That came into being following Gideon against Wainwright, which assured everybody the right to have an attorney. Now, prior to Gideon against Wainwright in Wake County, and I think all over North Carolina, capital cases got court-appointed attorneys. However, they were not paid by the state or the administrative office of the court. There was no administrative office of the court. The county commissioners had to pay for representing capital defendants. I remember hearing Mr. Edmund Gill, state treasurer, who was an outstanding attorney, as well as being a state treasurer. Before he came to Raleigh to serve as secretary to Governor O. Max Gardner, he practiced law in Laurinburg. He was appointed to defend a man in Laurinburg who was charged with the capital crime of murder. He tried the case in Laurinburg. The man was convicted. He appealed the case at the North Carolina Supreme Court. The conviction was affirmed, and Mr. Gill was paid by the commissioners of Scotland County the munificent and magnificent sum of $25. Now, Alice also asked me to tell something about downtown Raleigh. There were the Ambassador Theater, the Wake Theater, the State Theater, the Palace Theater, and the Capitol Theater. The Wake Theater was a theater you wouldn't want to go in unless you were armed. The Palace Theater and the Capitol Theater were down on Martin Street, in the Martin Street bottom, and they were the cowboy show theaters. All of the auto dealers in Raleigh were on Federal Street or nearby. Walls Motor Company was on the corner of Davie and Federal. They sold DeSotas and Plymouths. Other Barnes was just below them. They sold Oldsmobile and Cadillacs. Carolina Buick was just below them. They sold Buicks. Sir Walter Chevrolet was on Hargan Street, believe it or not, up next to Lewis Sporting Goods, where the First Presbyterian Church had just cleared out a lot. Of course, they sold Chevrolets, and later they moved down on Lower McDowell Street. Harmon Motor Company was the new man on the block. They were down on Lower Federal Street, and they came out with this new car, the Mercury. Lincoln Mercury. Harmon Motor Company had that dealership. CC Motor Company was over on Wilmington Street, Wilmington and Davie. They sold Plymouths and Chryslers. Sanders Ford Company was down on Blunt Street. Nash Steel was down on Cabarrus Street. They sold Dodge and Plymouth. The hotels were the Sir Walter, the Mansion Park, the Anchor Johnson, the Carolina, and the Raleigh. There were also some little hotels, the Richmond, the Hollywood, and the Palace. Now, The stores on Main Street were Hudsonville, Effords, Niles, Lanier Womble, Taylor's, and all of you who've been here a while remember Taylor's. The slogan, it was a great slogan, the showplace of the Carolinas. And I assure you, you could walk up and down Federal Street in front of Taylor's clothing store. It catered to women primarily. You could see all of the women from Eastern North Carolina strolling up and down Federal Street going to Taylor's. Next door to Taylor's was the Ambassador Theater. Next door to that was the Carolina Fruit Store. Joe P. White, Carolina Hardware, and S.W. Brule, the hardware stores on Wilmington Street. The two brokerage houses, the only two I heard of in those days, were J.S. Bates and Merrill Lynch. They were both on Salisbury Street. And Merrill Lynch was next door to Johnson Lamb. Now, the restaurants were the S&W, So Walter Coffee Shop, and Red Valentine at that time was operating the Green Grill on Wilmington Street. So that tells you something about Raleigh. 109 lawyers just before World War II, and about 190 lawyers in 1949 when those of us who are being presented today started practicing law. Now, Tom Adams and I have agreed that we would divide the responsibility of reading these biographical sketches. But Tom, would you stand up and let us get a look at you again? You can sit back down and rest. This is Tom Adams. Tom and I were classmates in law school. He and I were not the tip-top of the class. But another Raleigh friend was the #1 man in our class. And I want to pay tribute to him today. He was not only was he an outstanding student, he was a good fellow. He was Joe Moore. His son is a lawyer here in Raleigh now, and there's never been a finer man than young Joe Moore's dad, Joe Moore. Young Joe Moore's mother was Sarah Ruark, and when Joe got out of law school, he too was fortunate. He got a job with Ruark and Ruark, right next door to my job with Douglas and McMillan on the 10th floor of the insurance building. But Joe was a fine man, and he was the #1 man in the class that Tommy and I had in law school. But here's a biographical sketch of Tom Adams. Thomas F. Adams, Jr. was born August 24, 1921, and raised in rural Wake County, and graduated from Fuquay Marina High School. He attended UNC Chapel Hill as an undergraduate and graduated from law school in 1949 with an LLB degree, later converted to the JD degree. During World War II, he was with the United States Navy Amphibious Forces and served as the commanding officer of an LSM and rose to the rank of lieutenant commander. He started practicing law with the late George Balcom, specializing in title certification and real estate development. Later, he headed the firm of Adams, Lancaster, C. Rice, and Sherrill. Then he was with the firm of Morgan, Taylor, Ellis, and Adams. Now he is with the firm of Adams, Portney, and Burberry. Tom is listed in the best lawyers in America in his special. He is noted for having developed the initial 900-acre phase of the Kildare Farm development. He is a lifelong Baptist and has been in the Lions Club for many years. As a younger man, he was an officer in the JCs. His hobbies are playing golf and performing as an amateur magician. He enjoys golf, but is not as avid in his devotion to the game as is his wife, Ann, who sits by him. She always won. He and his wife have 3 sons and 3 grandsons. Now, I'm going to take the liberty of the position I have. He has deleted this. I really think he needs to be recognized as being a magician. He used to come to the Boy Scout troop that I led and do magic tricks. And he's a great magician, but he will not do it anymore. He said people just worrying him to death, asking him to come to Sunday school classes, Boy Scout troops, other gatherings, but he's really a good magician, and he needs to be recognized for that, although he deleted it. But don't call upon him to do it. All right, this is Warren Casey. Warren, would you please stand up? Warren Casey was educated in the public schools of Wayne County, North Carolina. He received a BA degree from Wake Forest University in 1942 and a JD degree in 1949. He attended also the graduate law course at the Army Judge Advocate General School at the University of Virginia, completing that in 1954. His bar membership and practice included the admission to the Bar of North Carolina in 1949. He also he was admitted to the practice for the Supreme Court of Ohio and Vermont and the Supreme Court of the United States. His professional experience includes serving in the Army Judge Advocate General's Corps. He handled the traditional military justice duties and served as a military judge in the trial of court-martial cases. Also handled cases involving a wide spectrum of subjects, but concentrated in the field of government contracts, litigation, tort claims, and intellectual property. He retired from the Army in 1969 with the rank of colonel. After retiring from the Army, he served as legal counsel for TRW Incorporated and for General Electric Company in Burlington, Vermont. He handled cases involving research and development, technology transfer, international licensing of patents, manufacturing know-how, and other types of intellectual property. He retired from GE in 1984 and returned to Raleigh. His present situation, he's active in community and civic matters and is currently serving as president of the Raleigh Civitan Club. He attends Millbrook Baptist Church. A personal note on Warren, he submitted some data to me, and I asked him if he wanted to enlarge upon it. He said no. When he was in the Army, he submitted enough reports to enough generals to know that anything over 1 page long, the second page will be thrown away. So, I thought that was pretty good insight. Raymond W. Dew, Jr. Judge Dew, will you stand up, please? Judge Dew received a degree in Business Administration from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and the J.D. degree from Emory University Law School in Atlanta, Georgia, and the LLM degree from Atlanta Law School in Atlanta. He was admitted to the Georgia Bar in 1949. He practiced law in Atlanta with Howard, Tillett, and Howard, and in Marietta, Georgia, as partner with Bentley and Butte. He was admitted to practice before the U.S. Supreme Court in 1965. He served as an Assistant Attorney General in the North Carolina Department of Justice. During World War II, he served in the Army, and he retired as a colonel. He served in the European theater, receiving the Battle Star, the Bronze Star, and the Combat Infantry Badge. He is a past president of the Capital City Kiwanis Club, Northbrook Country Club, Raleigh Civic Council, 2 terms, and charter member and secretary of the Better Business Bureau. He's a past member of the United Methodist Church Board of Stewards, past actor in the Raleigh Little Theater and many radio, television, and print media commercials. He is presently active. He's an active member of Hayes Barton Baptist Church, the Senior Survivors. For those of you who are younger, that's an organization of lawyers that has nothing to do but have fun. If you're over 60. And Wake County Bar activities. His wife is Maxine Collins Dew. They have these children, Robert Dew, Suzanne Rigsby, and Carolyn Greensfelder, and they have 4 grandchildren. He noted this as his proudest moment. An appearance before the North Carolina Board of Law Examiners, during which my presentation convinced them to amend their comedy rules, resulting in my admission to practice law in North Carolina without taking the North Carolina Bar exam. We call it the Dew Amendment. Attorney General Robert Morgan presented me to the court for admission and later appointed me as Assistant Attorney General. Now, I'm going to read a paper now outlining the life of a good friend of mine and Tommy Adams, again, a classmate of ours, Theodore Hagler, Jr. Ted Hagler was born in Johnsonville, South Carolina in 1924. He was raised in Sanford, North Carolina, and graduated from Sanford High School. He attended college and law school at UNC Chapel Hill, receiving his law degree in 1949. He was admitted to the bar that year. He was licensed as a CPA, practicing with A.T. Allen and Company for 8 years. For 2 years, he was with the CPA firm of Rodman and Hagler in Washington, North Carolina. Then he was with Superior Stone Company in Raleigh from 1959 to 1964, and with its successor corporation, American Marietta and Martin Marietta, in New York from 1964 to 1970. In 1970, he joined Burroughs Welcome Company in New York, moving back to Raleigh. With that firm, moved to Research Triangle Park. He served as comptroller, vice president of finance, and president and CEO, retiring in 1989. He is a longtime member of White Memorial Presbyterian Church, the Royal Rotary Club, and various professional associations. He is married to the former Peggy Jelks Williamson. Between them, they have 8 children and 14 grandchildren. Quoting him, quote, "Although I have never practiced law, I value my law school training and the lifelong friends made there. Congratulations to all the 50-year lawyers and best wishes for the future." One other person who is Ted was also in mine and Tommy's class, and the next man is to William T. Joyner Jr. He is not here now, but this is a biographical sketch. Bill Joyner was born in Raleigh and attended Murphy Elementary School and Hugh Morrison High School. He graduated from high school at BPS in Lynchburg, Virginia. He is an alumnus of UNC Chapel Hill, graduated from college and the law class in 1949. During World War II, he served as an officer in the United States Navy. Following graduation from law school, he joined his father, Colonel W.T. Joyner, and Robert Harrison in the firm of Joyner and Harrison. Later, his brother Walton and others joined the firm. He was involved with Utilities Commission practice and railroad and corporate law. A severe stroke in 1969 necessitated a change of focus to more of an office-oriented practice. He was born and raised a Baptist, but became an Episcopalian by marriage and attends Good Shepherd Church in Raleigh. He and his wife Marguerite, now deceased, have 2 children and 5 grandchildren. He added this in his notes, under 7, so that's quite a house full, 5 under 7. His hobbies are spending time with his grandchildren and spending time in the exercise classes at the Hillsborough Street YMCA. In recent years, he has become an avid follower of the European Grand Opera Tour. He enjoys seeing and hearing his son, who this season has been singing at La Scala Opera House in Milan, Italy. I believe that covers my assignment, so I'll turn the floor over to Tom Allen.
Bob made such a good talk that this will sound like a BS, which I think it probably is. I'll tell you one thing about Bob. You know, the finest thing that happens to lawyers is to have the respect of their fellow attorneys as well as the judges. And when Bob says something, no one ever doubts his sincerity. No one ever doubts that he intended to do what was best for his client, but held his own head high. And I always thought that he was just tops when it came to lawyers and the legal practice here in Raleigh. So since I've got his my introductory remarks made, I might as well go ahead with his the notes we have on his biography. He was born and raised in the city of Raleigh, attended Wiley Elementary School, and graduated from Nita Broughton High School. He received a BS degree from Wake Forest College, now of course Wake Forest University, and the LLB degree converted to a JD degree from UNC at Chapel Hill in 1949. During World War II and the Korean War, he served as an officer in the Marine Corps. His professional career has included associations with his father and brother, and Clyde A. Douglas and Clyde A. Douglas II. He served as prosecutor of the Raleigh Municipal Court, and ever since 1954 has been engaged in the general practice of law with emphasis on criminal defense trials, period. Since 1985, he has practiced law with Steve Smith, Duncan McMillan, William Plyler, and for a while with Jim Kimsey, Martha Walston, and Catherine G. Bob has served as president of the Wake County Bar Association and the 10th Judicial District. He was designated as the first recipient of the Joseph Branch Professionalism Award and is a member of the North Carolina General Practice Hall of Fame. For many years, he was a scoutmaster in Troop 306, which was formerly Troop 6, for those of the Boy Scouts in the audience, of the Occoneechee Council, the Boy Scouts of America, and holds the Silver Beaver Award. He is a lifelong member of Fulham Memorial Baptist Church and is a member and past president of the Raleigh Rotary Club. Bob's hobbies are hiking, camping, canoeing, and flower gardening. That relates back to his mother. His mother, for those who don't know, was always going around to the hospitals and taking flowers that she grew. And she was a lovely lady. And all of us who are in my generation remember her well. Bob's wife is former Virginia Maynard of Emporia, Virginia, and San Jose, Costa Rica. They have 6 children and are happy to claim 15 grandchildren. Bob. And Bob, you in Virginia, stand up and let everybody see you again. Another member of our class that I have the highest regard for is Marshall Harstfield. Marshall was born in Wake County in April 11, 1923. He's just a young fellow. He was educated in public schools in the town of Wake Forest. He attended college and law school at Wake Forest College, which of course is now Wake Forest University, receiving the LLB degree and later converted it to a CD, a JD degree. He is a member and has been active in the Haste Barton United Methodist Church. He served this congregation as president of the administrative board and the chairman of the board of trustees. From 1977 to 1990, he served as chancellor of the North Carolina United Methodist Church. Marshall served in the U.S. Army during World War II, and his duty, most of it, was in Italy. In the civic affairs of this community, he has served as president of the West Raleigh Rotary Club and the Board of Governors of the North Ridge Country Club. In his legal career, he was a longtime partner of the firm of Horner, Garrity, Harstfield, and Townsend, one of the premier real estate development firms of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. This firm later merged to become the firm of Horner and Sproul, which is located, as you no doubt know, right next door to this building. In this firm, Marshall continued as a partner until his recent retirement. In 1984, he served as president of the Wake County Bar Association. He has been included in the book entitled Best Lawyers in America. His hobbies are playing golf and dancing. He's proficient in both. He and his wife Florence are the parents of 3 grown children, but to date they don't have any three grown children, not grandchildren, because they don't have any grandchildren. I wish you luck. I'd like to ask Marshall and his lovely wife Florence to stand, please. I have 2 or 3 notes I want to go over, and then I'll do like Bob did, and I'll cover the biographical sketches of those who were unable to be with us today that have not been yet recognized. Bob mentioned my magic. I do love to do magic, and I'd like to tell you, I don't mind doing magic, and I don't do much anymore. But the reason I had to quit was because I had some good clients, and they all had children and grandchildren, and I got called on so much to go out and do magic shows at night that I really just couldn't take it, because we were as busy as a one-armed paper hanger in our firm, and it just wasn't that many hours a day. So I want you to understand that I didn't really mind to do the magic. It's just have to have enough time to do it. I'll also reminisce a little bit about our past years. In those days, when I first started practicing, we got $25 for doing one title search, and we were right happy when we finally got it up to $40. We had a little bit of a problem. Sometimes they would get these things would get referred to us by some of the older attorneys who didn't want to be bothered going down to the salt mine at the courthouse, and who were trying to big cases but it made a lot of money, and but they kind of like to have us split the fee. And, but I was mighty happy when it came along with a little ethics opinion that said if you hadn't supplied any of the services in a matter, you weren't entitled to split the fee. So that helped out a little bit. Tell you about Martindale Hubble. They would go around and get their information from the more prominent attorneys about the various other people in the profession in town. Well, the profession that was involved in examining titles to real estate, and there's a whole lot more to real property work than examining title to real estate, as those of us that do it know. But the ones that did the outstanding trial work and were very prominent, they didn't think too much of the folks who just couldn't do the general practice, but they were sort of limiting their practice to something that they could make ends meet, but weren't really getting all that wealthy at it. And but one day, and our firm didn't hold any rating in Martindale Hubble except Mr. Barton, that gave him a B rating. He'd been practicing about 50 years, and but it was nowhere listed in the book of Martindale Hubble that Balcom and Adams. That was our first partnership name, which Mr. Barton was gracious enough to let me get on the letterhead after a couple of years with him. And so, but one day I got a solicitation to buy Martindale Hubble for our library, and it was addressed to Balcom and Adams. Well, I couldn't wait. I turned that thing over, and I wrote on the back side that nowhere in your book does this firm name appear, and it seems that you need to have your circulation people and advertisers to catch up with the, your editorial to catch up with the circulation people and advertisers. And so it was about a week or two later that I've got a photocopy, and you didn't see photocopies in those days either. Their local representative showed up in my office, and I told them we'd have no interest at all in Martindale Hubble unless they could catch up to, unless and not show so much prejudice against those who limited their practice to things like real estate. And so I got a nice lecture from him indicating that he was finding that was true all around, and that he couldn't promise me anything, of course, and I didn't expect him to, but he wanted me to know that he thought well of my comments, and he thought maybe something would get done about it. I thought that might be a little sidelight. And the answer to that was that Mr. Parker got an A rating out of that, and I got a B rating, and I told him if he ever put me a C rating, I'm damned if I wouldn't cancel this. That was killing you with kindness. Now I'd like to proceed on with the biographicals that I have. One of them I remember as one of my classmates and had great respect for was Judge Fred Hendrick. It's listed as R.A. Hendrick, but we always call him Fred, and I don't know where he got the Fred from, unless his name was Alfred and everybody called him Fred for short. But anyway, he was a classmate of ours and a fine judge. He started practicing in rural Iredell County, near the county seat of Statesville. And in fact, of course, he got his degree from 1946, and then he was undergraduate, and then he went to law school and graduated in 49. Following his graduation, he opened a solo law practice in Iredell County and continued to practice there until he was elected the county prosecutor for Iredell County in 1951. He continued in that position until elected county judge in 1958, which position he held until 1969. In 1969, he was appointed to the North Carolina Court of Appeals and became chief judge of the Court of Appeals in 1985. In 1993, he retired from the Court of Appeals and from the position of chief judge after completing the longest period of service on that court in history, and after holding the position of chief judge of that court longer than any other person in the history of that court. He and his wife Pat now live in Raleigh. They are parents of 4 children, and they have 5 grandchildren. Their son Jeff is an attorney living and practicing in Boone, North Carolina. Their daughter Marty is a retired naval officer and lives in Eatonton. Their daughter Joanna is a former school teacher and now operating a farm. Their son John is a lawyer in Raleigh, and he is survived. He is married, I'm sorry, to another lawyer. See, I get a little nervous up here once when I read about judges. Judge Hendrick's hobbies included spending time at his beach home, fishing, and sports. He's an avid Carolina sports team supporter and continues to be very interested in political affairs. If you know Fred, you would certainly know that he was interested in political affairs. But he was an outstanding person. He had a brother that was in school with us too. He was not blind, but Judge Hendrick, you have to appreciate it. And I tend to think about him. The older I get, sometimes the older you get, more often you gotta walk around in the dark at night a little bit. And when I get up walking around in the dark at night, I think of Judge Hendrick. But he was and is an outstanding person. B.C. Allen Jr. B.C. was born and raised in Raleigh. He attended Hayes Barton Elementary School, which is now known as the Myrtle Underwood School, and graduated from Broughton High School. He graduated from Duke University with a BS degree, and from Washington and Lee University with a JD degree. During World War II and the Korean War, he served in the United States Navy, attaining the rank of lieutenant. His professional career reflects the training he received at Rutgers University Graduate School of Banking, For more than 10 years, he served as a trust officer with BB&T in Wilson and in Goldsboro. From 1960 until his retirement in 1978, he served as Vice President and Trust Officer with Nations Bank, of course you know it now, Bank of America, in Raleigh. During 1970s, he served as President of the North Carolina Bankers Association Trust Division. Also, he served as Dean of the Association's Trust School at Campbell University. Since his retirement from the bank, B.C. and his wife have been active in antique business, and he has been involved in personal investing. He and his wife, Jean, have one son, David, who is married to the former Amy Sugg of Cary. They have one grandchild. Their other son, Brant, is deceased. B.C. is a member of the White Memorial Presbyterian Church and the Raleigh Kiwanis Club. His hobbies are swimming and watching basketball, in particular, deep. B.C. is an outstanding person that I've admired and was a fine trust officer with the bank. Cale K. Burgess Jr. Cale K. Burgess Jr. is a lifelong resident of Raleigh. He was educated in Raleigh public schools, finishing Broughton High School in 1940. He received a BA degree and the LLB degree from UNC Chapel Hill and licensed to practice law in 1949. From 1943 to 1946, he served in the U.S. Army, which of course was during World War II. He and his daughters are members of the Hayes Barton United Baptist Methodist Church. He's a member of the Raleigh Host Lions Club and the American Legion. His professional career included work with travelers, insurance companies, and the staff of the Administrative Office of the Court. He retired in 1995. I thank you for the privilege of seeing all of us here today. We value very much being in the practice of law, as I'm sure you do, and we appreciate the generous welcome that you have given us today. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Mr. Adams and Robert McMillan for their presentations today of this in honor of all of these fine attorneys. I'd like to ask the honorees to remain after we adjourn in a moment to present them with plaques which we have and want to present them so they might remember today. With that, I want to remind everybody our next luncheon meeting is the Mordecai meeting on May the 2nd, which we'll have Wilbur's Barbecue, I believe May the 2nd at Mordecai with Wilbur's Barbecue, which is always great. So I encourage everyone to come out. Of course, we don't have a program for that meeting. With that, the meeting was